All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer, and this is Conversations on Retail. We are here today with Wes Schroll. He's a co-founder and CEO of Fetch Rewards. Wes, how are you?
I'm great. Can't complain.
That's awesome. I've really looked forward to this conversation. I know we don't have a long time together this afternoon, but there's a couple areas where I wanted to kind of dig deeply. First of all, let me say to those that are joining live and those of you watching the video later, this is a little bit of an intimidating conversation because the work that Fetch is doing on the surface seems quite simple, but as you dig into the work that they're doing and some of the capabilities that they're deploying, there really is an awful lot to it. So I don't want to sit here today and pretend to be an expert. We're looking forward to learning something from you, Wes. The two areas that I really wanted to focus on today, though, was your entrepreneurial journey, and you've told the story of your founding and the early years a number of times. So I won't make you tell every single detail, but I think it is important. I mean, you all just closed another round, $240 million round in financing, making Fetch worth $2.5 billion. So congratulations on that. But I'd love for you to start just by telling the early story of Fetch. I mean, it started like so many other incredibly, interesting and powerful stories. It started off with a problem that you were experiencing yourself as a college student, and then you went and kind of built a solution around it.
Yeah, I think for me, the first experience that I had with the problem was truly one that was a very intrinsic, selfishly motivated problem that I stumbled into. I had just moved out of the freshman year dorm where I had been fed every meal in the cafeteria and into an apartment my sophomore year. And I was trying to figure out how to get my dollar to stretch as far as possible. And I remember, to the frustration of my roommates, I would have all these weekly circulars laying out on the counter, trying to figure out what retailer do I go to on which day if I'm going to try to buy this item because it's on sale. And then when I go to the retailer, I would sign up for their loyalty card because I wanted to make sure I was getting the best price and hear about the other deals that they had. And even when I got home and I'm starting to put away the groceries, I start to look at the actual packaging of the products and I start realizing, oh, I can sign up for my Coke Rewards or Kellogg's Rewards. And I started signing up for all of those too. And I think a couple months into that experience, I'd been getting a little worn down from the amount of hoops that I was having to jump through. And I was equally frustrated that as I looked across all of the things that I was doing, I was saving a decent amount of money. Like, these companies are genuinely discounting things to a level that's interesting and valuable to me as a consumer. But if I zoomed in on any one of the programs, especially the loyalty programs, I never even had enough to cash out. And I was getting really frustrated by that. I couldn't understand why, if companies are then going to advertise to me on TV and tell me how much they want to earn my loyalty and how much they value me as a customer, why am I the one who's having to prove myself? Shouldn't they find a way to actually connect with me as a consumer, treat me as an individual, optimize their company for me, and prove their loyalty to me? If a company would do that, I would happily spend more of my money with them. I became obsessed with that idea very early on. And I think for me, one of the things that kept me going was at the end of my sophomore year, I knew in order to be able to get company off the ground, I would need some sort of financing. So I started competing in different business plan competitions. And what I found out very quickly is, even though we didn't have a product in market, we didn't have a single dollar of revenue, the judges kept voting for Fetch to win. And we ended up winning, $180,000 in cash and office and all these things, because people just understood that problem. The second you brought it up, well, people may have gotten conditioned to it and used to jumping through the hoops. The second you identified that as being strange and something that there could be a better way of doing, everyone rallied behind it. So ended up dropping out full-time after my sophomore year to start the business. And then we launched the Fetch Rewards app in March of 2017 and have been really growing since then. So it's been a blast so far, and just excited to continue to hopefully make my 19-year-old self proud by saying, hey, we are out there solving the problem. We've solved it for 13 million people, and we believe that we can get it to 30, 40 million people in the US alone that we can solve this problem for.
Incredible. So we've had some more folks join since, and forgive me because I kind of rushed the introduction, but for those who have joined, Conversations on Retail is intended to be an interactive sort of experience, not just folks listening in on a conversation between two people, but very participatory. So if you've got questions that you would like for me to ask Wes, use the Q&A button within Zoom, not chat, but Q&A, and submit me those questions, and I'll make sure to ask those. So let's talk about what Fetch Rewards was, the kind of first iteration.
So the original idea has always been to do what we're doing today. I think for the first couple of years, we actually couldn't figure out the technology that would make it seamless enough for the consumer experience to be something that was fun and engaging and very easy to do. So we ended up, pivoting around for the first couple of years as we were trying different technologies. We ended up working directly with individual retailers in their stores. But again, by the time we got to 2017, we had kind of cracked the code on both receipt scanning and then eventually also submitting digital receipts. And I think that's when we realized we had product market fit, because we all of a sudden had a platform that could be used anywhere across the country and that people were gravitating to, wanted to invite their friends and family to, and allowed us to kind of take off like wildfire from there. And then since then, it's been all about adding additional functionality. We've now made it so consumers can submit receipts from restaurants, and now we actually even have restaurant partners, so we can give you rewards from not just our CPG original partners, now also retailers that we work with like CVS and Safeway Albertsons, but now also even restaurants. So we've been super excited as we've continued to get larger and larger, both from a consumer standpoint and from the amount of transactions they submit. It allows us to go out there and do our job, which is to fetch them rewards for the areas that they care about. So that's a little of the journey so far.
One of the things I've heard you talk about in other conversations was your focus on lifetime value as opposed to short-term bumps. Can you speak to that a little bit?
I mean, for me, I remember one of my first ever conversations back in 2017. This was the aha for the pain point that existed for the industry. I was talking with a very large CPG company, and I asked them the simple question, just trying to understand their business. Tell me a little bit about the LTV of your consumers. And the person literally said, "What's LTV?" I was like, "Oh, the lifetime value." And I said, "Oh yeah." And then they type in their email and they pull up this study that had done a sample of 1,000 people. And they're like, "Our LTV is $78 a year." I was like, "That's how you're making your decisions, is off of that single survey response of 1,000 people. You are making hundreds of millions of dollars worth of spend decisions with that working model." And it blew me away, because when I think about how what has made technology and online companies be able to scale so fast, is they have an absolute mastery of understanding what their LTV is, what their CAC, cost of acquisition, is. And since it's online, you have the ability to actually talk with an individual consumer. But when we zoomed in on the retail space, because of how fragmented the retail industry is in the US, and therefore all the data sets are very fragmented, the consumer experiences are fragmented, no one has the ability to at mass calculate LTV for consumers. And then even if you could, be able to then affect it. And I think that's exactly what Fetch provides. Across right now over 13 million monthly active users, we can quantify LTV across any of the categories that they're in. We can then go and connect them with companies who want to increase that, and they increase it by offering the consumer rewards. And as the consumer then increases their LTV, they earn more points. Fetch has a markup on that. So then Fetch earns more revenue and our partners generate more sales. So we love the business model that we created. It kind of aligns all three parties at the table. But I think fundamentally what we're all about is really helping an industry that has been around for 100+ years, and therefore it still has a lot of antiquated techniques, to move away from mixed media models and ROAS calculations, and move towards something that is statistically relevant incremental sales. And it's a double-edged sword. Not everyone can do that right now. So it's very much comparing apples to oranges. But we think as we can continue to scale, we can introduce partnerships, we'll be able to empower the entire industry to start being able to hold anyone who's claiming that they can help a CPG or a retailer or a restaurant actually put their money where their mouth is, prove through these statistically relevant, well-proven out methodologies that they're actually moving the needle. And I think you'll find out that there's a ton of waste in the system right now, and that everyone will benefit as we start to get rid of some of that waste, and especially the consumer. They will benefit because they will get more of that was otherwise just being thrown away.
Well, and a lot of brands are continuing to throw money at product on the basis of assumptions that they're making, but you're really aggregating a lot of behavioral data. You are seeing what people are actually buying.
And then we make it so you can speak to those consumers on a one-to-one basis. So you open your app and you're going to see, we actually were just in a car driving up here with me and some of my team members, and we were all talking about an offer that just went live, and we all opened our app and every single one of our offers was different. mine was spend $10, someone was spend 25, someone was spend 35. And it's because it does understand, like, it knows who the consumer is and knows what it takes to drive something that's just incremental. So everyone's still having to stretch to be able to get there, but you're actually really creating value then for your partners.
How has the game changed? I mean, every conversation I'm a part of, people are talking, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, but what are some of the most profound ways that you've seen the shopper change in terms of their their patterns and priorities and their looking for deals and brand loyalty? And just, what are some of the things that kind of rise to the top of your mind?
I think for a lot of people, more than even just the tangible benefits of what these products are that you're buying, I think what we're starting to see, especially going back into a more open economy and just more open environment, people are going back towards the in-person shopping because it's an experience. It's something to do. It's something to be able to go and provide back for your family. And I think we've been surprised by, we went from the amount of digital receipts we were receiving pre-pandemic to during the pandemic skyrocketing to very quickly starting to come back down. Not anywhere close to where it was pre-pandemic, still significantly higher than that. But you are seeing a lot of people basically going back to that in person. And it's something we believe a lot in. We believe that there's always this intangible experience component to things that humans choose to do. And if you think about, like, our business, a physical receipt is essentially an artifact of money leaving your bank account, which is inherently painful. No one loves seeing money leave their bank account. And then through Fetch, you can take a picture of it and instantly have it turn into a positive experience of getting something back and having that emotional satisfaction that you were able to not have to just let money go out. So I think we've seen the same with consumers' shopping behaviors, that there is an element that a lot of people thought it would just keep going up and to the right, of people moving more and more. Once you see the convenience of, at-home delivery, you're never going to go back. And again, I think we're just seeing that it's more resilient, not because consumers don't want convenience, but just because there's more to that experience than just the getting food into your grocery or into your fridge at home. So that for me has always been interesting to see it at such large scale, that's kind of what the masses are doing. But it rings true for me in my own personal experience. I know that, I certainly value that same thing, and, going out to a restaurant every once in a while and things like that. So those are some of the things that we've seen.
Again, if anyone has any questions, use the Q&A button and submit those. And we're going to be wrapping up in the next 15 minutes with Wes. And so a lot of folks are inflation is top of mind for all of us right now. Are you finding that as consumers become more aware that they're spending more and more money on each purchase, that loyalty and rewards in general becomes more important to them?
I'd say absolutely. I mean, there's a couple compounding factors, right? So throughout the last 2 years in general, there's been tons of supply chain problems. So someone who may have been a devout loyalist to Gatorade all of a sudden tries one of the new Powerade flavors that they never had before because Gatorade was out that week. And then they go and try it, and maybe they do end up liking it. Then you have things like inflation, where people are trading down because they're just trying to save that extra dollar. So I think in both of those cases, a brand going above and beyond and connecting with the consumer, and in the first case, being able to say, hey, Gatorade's back on the shelf, you should probably give that person something to switch back. Assume that they love the other product that they have. Now it's your turn to have to go and prove yourself again to win them back over. I think a channel like Fetch enables you to identify that and be able to then communicate to those consumers and win them back over, which I think is exactly what brands should always be doing, fighting to keep their brand and their products the best possible so that they get the consumer, repeat behavior. And even on the trade down, I think when a consumer feels like they're being rewarded for it, I think a lot of people, there's again an emotional value to feeling like you're getting the name brand blue chip item. And I think when you have a rewards program where the consumer can feel smart and feel like they're still getting something, even if it's not the cheapest option on the shelf, they'll do that because the benefit of having that good, the brand and the blue chip item plus a little rewards will outweigh the couple of pennies extra that you would have saved going down to the private label. So I think in both cases, it's highlighting the need for something that does reward consumers if you're not wanting to see that be eroded away.
And I've got to think that the gamification aspect is pretty important. There's people that would use the app. I would use the app not necessarily because I'm looking to save a little bit of money or get some sort of financial reward, but just it just adds another layer. It's kind of a fun thing to do as you're shopping.
I totally agree, and I think we can very much, this type of shopping is something that can become mundane and repeatable, and having something that does feel a little bit like a scavenger hunt where you're going out and going to try something new or try to maximize your points, or we added a new social feature where you can compete with friends and family on the leaderboard. Those little things go a long way. I think if you think about food in general, it's been social for the last 10,000 years since society was starting to settle down into, farming communities. So I think there is tons of value that is very deeply intrinsically valuable to humans in making it more fun and more of an experience. And if you're going to spend a couple hours a week doing it, yeah, you should be able to have a smile on your face while doing it. I think that's great. Yeah. So we talk all the time about Fetch. We're all about, introducing micro moments of happiness to that consumer's week. And if we do that across tens of millions of people, we love what we do then we feel really good about the work that we're doing. And gamification in a way that feels authentic and doesn't feel over the top is really, really, really important, I think.
In the context of retail, because obviously you're playing in food service now in other areas, but in terms of retail specifically, do you have a sweet spot? Are there categories that perform better than others? Is there more of a bias toward big brands versus small brands, or have you democratized it where just about anybody can participate and see the same kind of result?
I would say it's interesting across not only like the representation of transactions that we get from different types of retailers, also our demographics of who our consumers are using the program. Everything's super representative, actually, of what you would expect it to be in the US. And I think that just goes to speaking to, we appeal to the masses. We're not a niche couponing type platform that applies to 4 or 5 million couponers. That is probably all that there is in the US. We apply to tens of millions of people because of what you said, because there's multiple elements of value beyond even just the savings that people will engage with Fetch because of. So I think we definitely lean into that. We see that aspect of it. In terms of the brands and retailers, it's an 80-20 rule. Our goal is to go out there and try to get as much value for the masses as possible. So it definitely means we start by working with the large CPGs and the large retailers, large restaurants, because it will just cover as much of the US as possible so that we can quickly get the majority of people rewarded. I think in the long run, though, it's in everyone's best interest if we can also work with the up and coming type companies so we can identify which ones are doing well, not doing well. I can tell you some of our large CPG partners would love to understand what are the up and coming companies that, they should go and form a partnership with. And I think something like Fetch can enable that for them. So right now, I would say it's more the large scale, but we definitely believe that it should be something that we should be able to work with lots.
What's the future look like? And in broad terms, I mean, obviously you don't want to give anything away that, competitive, disadvantage or whatever, but in broad terms, what are the problems that you're working to solve today? What are the opportunities that your team is looking to address today based on how the retail landscape and how shopping and consumption is changing? What are you trying to get ahead of?
As of right now, after the month of March, we are capturing $108 billion worth of GMV on an annual basis. That's equivalent of the 6th largest retailer, even though we've only been around for 5 years. I believe over the next 2.5, 3 years, we will be capturing over $500 billion worth of sales in the US alone. That will be the single largest retail in the United States. And what's so exciting about that is its complete omni-channel holistic view into the households that are participating. And that will enable us to curate an experience for them that only becomes more and more valuable and meaningful to them in the long run. We want to introduce not just the ability to save via Fetch points, which is super valuable, but how do we unlock other brand experiences? We work to enable people to go to, a football game that they otherwise couldn't pay to be able to do, but it's now an experience. We can enable that for our partners. And at that that scale, we get really excited. We're doing things that we also think will enable more of a community feel. As I mentioned, the social component that we're launching. We launched the app in full Spanish, and it's rolling out right now. So we're going to try to make the experiences customized and curated for all of our consumers in the US. And we think that will help not only them have a great rewarding experience, but we think for all of our partners, we're going to be able to deliver them en masse the ability to actually influence their business in an efficient way that is truly profitable and measurable. And that will unlock, I think, a lot of things for a lot of companies.
Well, and so much focus now on first party data and building up email databases and so forth, but you've created a community where there's almost this cooperative benefit, right, as you're aggregating all of this data. It just seems like there would be so much more of a benefit to be a part of this growing community where your user base is big and growing, and they're super engaged, right? Like your users are scanning, is it one receipt a week? Do I remember that correctly?
27 transactions a month on average.
Oh,
which
wow.
means we have more daily active users than Starbucks, Uber Eats, or DoorDash, even though we have a fraction as many downloads. So exactly to your point, well, it could be nice to have someone's email. We don't think that's one, the way a consumer wants to be engaged with in the long run. And two, it's not actually all that valuable in terms of, if a consumer doesn't want to be engaged that way, and all it does is give you a channel to send your advertisements to them, that will very quickly be filtered out. We believe if you can create an experience where someone is opening the app more frequently than their Starbucks app, which inherently has a lot of value in it, that is what's going to be the future. It's earning the time with those consumers by delivering them real value. And that's what we think we're doing, and that's what our partners can then lend from us. And that's the thing that I get really excited about, is this channel of communication that has a higher engagement rate than really almost anything that's ever come in the shopping category before.
So circling back to kind of the entrepreneurial journey, you've got to be, so I mean, you had a lot of conviction early on about the power of the idea, and you were able to get folks excited very early, winning contests and raising seed money. You've got to be a little bit surprised to have turned that that idea your sophomore year in college into a company's worth $2.5 billion. What would you attribute the success? I mean, obviously strength of idea and so forth, but there had to have been some other factors that really played into this to allow you to accelerate growth and sustain it as you have.
I think naively, when I started the business, and if you were to be able to rewind and tell myself then, the scale that we're at, I would have had no surprise whatsoever. I'd be like, yeah, of course, that's how big of an idea this is. Like, there's that many people out there. The reason why I say naively is the X factor has been being able to pull together people who also see it and have the talent and the skill to make it happen. I don't write a single line of code. I'm not the person out there figuring out how we market to our consumers. I'm not the person working with all of our partners to understand their problems and the intersections. We have 715 amazing employees right now that, like, I know a lot of businesses talk about their employees being such a valuable thing, but when you scale this fast, if you don't have amazing people, you will trip. You absolutely will trip because you're going so fast. You are sprinting down a hill. And if you've ever sprinted down a hill, you got to get every step right. And it's so important that everyone is in the same boat together. And we've been super fortunate. I've been super lucky that this idea has attracted some of the best folks who maybe have never even been in our industry, or maybe had spent their whole career in our industry and were ready for something to change because they knew it needed to. That's what's continued to be, I think, the thing that my 19-year-old self would never have been able to ascribe enough value to. But myself today can tell you we would not be here without that. And a lot of that was just luck of connections and putting in the time and being willing to have the conversations with anyone who would listen, and then finding and pulling those threads from there and, trying to just piece together and do something that hadn't been done before.
Wes, this conversation has been so much fun for me as an entrepreneur, as someone who's grown up in retail and has seen the whole world change really over the last 30 years that I've been in the game. Congratulations to you and to your family, of course, and to the team that you've assembled. It's been so much fun to get to know your brand and some of the key folks in your team, especially those on the Bentonville team, which I know is growing rapidly, what would be the very best way for someone to engage your organization to explore what a partnership might look like?
Yeah, so we actually just launched our new partners website. So it can be for a manufacturer, or a retailer, or a restaurant partner. If they want to learn more, they can go check out some of what we're actively doing with some of our leading partners who are kind of trailblazing the way of figuring out how to unlock and unleash these 13 million plus, direct connections. So you can check that out. You'll be able to just fill out a form there, and we absolutely will get back to anyone, because we love collaborating with people who want to unlock the future together with us. So we would welcome any of those connections.
Awesome. Wes Schroll, co-founder and CEO of Fetch Rewards. Thank you again for making the time. Looking forward to meeting you someday in person. Congratulations on your success, and best wishes as you and your team charge ahead, changing the game.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Have a great day.